Thank you. A little background. As she mentioned, we were actually HubSpot's first partner agency back in late 07, early 08, I guess. So what we're going to talk about today is a little bit different than anything I've ever spoken about at Inbound, and I've been speaking at Inbound since 08. Thank you. That'll help. But the context to understand why I'm talking about this is you need to realize our origin in the automation space. So we've basically been there since the beginning with HubSpot. We've seen the development of that product and of the company, and we've watched the development of the automation space overall. For me personally, I've always been fascinated with what comes next. I spend a lot of time and energy trying to optimize what we're currently doing. We don't use HubSpot as well as we could. There's plenty more we could be doing there, but I tend to be fascinated with the next leap. And so that's really what I'm going to focus on today, is a practical approach to a topic that I think you're going to start seeing becoming a focus at pretty much every marketing conference next year. And for me, where it really accelerated is in April of 2015, I launched an internal initiative named Project CopyScale. And it was designed to answer one seemingly straightforward question: can we use artificial intelligence to create content? More specifically, can we use machines to write blog posts? So like many organizations and agencies, we were struggling to create content at scale while maintaining quality. I had just a month earlier gotten back from South by Southwest in Austin, where the managing editor of the Associated Press and the CEO of a company called Automated Insights were on stage talking about how the Associated Press had shifted earnings reports to 100% machine written. So they told the story of how every quarter the Associated Press would do 300 earnings reports written 100% by humans. They were now doing 3,000 100% written by machines. So I had also spent the better part of 3 years prior to that, not talking publicly about it much, but I was trying to build software that would eventually use artificial intelligence to automate marketing strategy. So basic premise was you come in and you have $100,000 or $500,000 or $1 million, whatever your budget is. How do you figure out how to spend that money? And so I looked around and saw the complexity of marketing and all these channels that were emerging, and it wasn't just a few trade magazines and a trade show and a few other channels. It was hundreds or thousands of channels where that money could go. And so I had seen what IBM had done with Watson on Jeopardy in 2011. I wondered, well, couldn't we do the same thing in marketing? If you can teach a machine to solve natural language questions, can't we teach it to figure out things based on probabilities in marketing? I'm not a developer though, so I had no idea really how to do any of that. I just started kind of going down the path to figure out, would it be possible? So because of that time I'd spent it, I kind of knew theoretically where we could go with artificial intelligence, but I had no idea what actually existed today and what we could use to transform our agency, the industry, and business as a whole. So what we've learned over the 18 months from April of 15 to today has transformed the way I look at what's possible now and in the near future, and that's what I'm going to share with you today. So a simple exercise to kind of envision where this is going is think about how much time you and your team spend doing each of these things every month. I'm actually going to read through a few of them because it's helpful. So social media updates, figuring out keywords to optimize for, planning blog post topics or editorial calendars, writing, optimizing, curating, personalizing, automating content, building workflows, writing ad copy, creating landing pages, predicting click rates, all of these things that we manually do today. Now, in a lot of cases, we're actually using tools like HubSpot to automate this, but if you think about it, you're actually telling the machine what to do. You figure out what the workflow is going to be. You figure out the blog post topics, and there are tools to help you, but as the marketer, you're still largely doing a lot of these things. Now imagine if you didn't have to, if all of those tasks we just showed were actually being done by a machine, and you were just enhancing and curating and kind of reviewing and adding a human layer of intelligence over it. The crazy part about this is it's actually possible today. And there's a technology that exists to do that, and that is artificial intelligence. So now when you hear artificial intelligence, the natural thing people have is it's sci-fi. It's like, if you've seen, how many people have seen Ex Machina or a movie like The Terminator even in the 80s. That's something called artificial general intelligence. It's making a machine as smarter than a human. It doesn't exist. And theoretically, it may never exist. We may never have machines that smart. That's what people think artificial intelligence is. It's not. This is Demis Hassabis. He's the founder of DeepMind, which got bought by Google for about $500 million in 2014. He was a child chess prodigy. He defines artificial intelligence as making machines smarter. It's called like narrow intelligence. It's teaching a machine to do one thing, like IBM Watson, teach it to win at Jeopardy. Taught it rules of engagement, you taught it how to win. The key though is what it really does is it augments humans' capabilities and knowledge. So you're going to hear terms, and you'll probably start seeing them after this talk if you haven't already: machine learning, deep learning, neural networks, natural language processing. These are all terms that are part of the AI umbrella. I'm not going to get into a bunch of definitions today, but again, just kind of familiarity. The other key concept to think about is an algorithm. So you, again, hear algorithms talked about within software. You write algorithms every day. You may just not know it. It's just a set of instructions that tells a computer what to do. So when you go in and create a workflow in HubSpot, you're basically writing an algorithm. If someone downloads this ebook, send them these 3 emails. If they click on this link, send them these 4 emails. If they meet this lead score, then trigger this. You're telling a machine what to do. The difference with artificial intelligence is the machine tells itself what to do. It starts writing its own algorithms. That's machine learning. So that is like the core topic you'll hear talked about with AI. Machines start to get more intelligent, figure out new paths. I'm going to show you examples of this that are happening in other industries, but also already in the marketing space. So the best way to understand what is coming in marketing is to look at other industries that have already been disrupted by this. So in 1987, a guy named Thomas Pefferty hacked NASDAQ. Literally took the feed coming from NASDAQ, taught a machine how to read what it was saying and make trades automated. NASDAQ thought that was a very bad thing because you needed a human, or you needed someone to actually input on the keys what to do. So he then built a robot to read and tap on the keys to make trades. That started the downfall of Wall Street in terms of being computerized. Today, over 60% of all trades are executed almost exclusively by machines with no human interaction. Again, I look at this and say, deciding trades is probably more complex than marketing strategy. The variables that go into when to trade and what to trade is very complex. So for 30 plus years, they've been doing this already in the financial institutions. UPS, 55,000 routes a day. That's how many routes there are the UPS does every day across the world. The average driver makes 120 stops in a day. So what is the possible number of alternate routes that a driver could take? The answer is actually a quinsextillion, which has 198 zeros. So if you think about the money that can be saved by UPS if they make one less right turn every day 55,000 times, that's the kind of complexity that's been being solved. UPS started something called Orion in 2003 to build a self-learning algorithm to figure out how to optimize the routes drivers took every day. By next year, they believe that they'll have all 55,000 routes running largely through Orion. Machine will be telling the driver what to do and where to go. Netflix, how many people have a Netflix account? So roughly 75% of what you watch on Netflix every day is recommended by some sort of algorithm. They're looking at your past behaviors. If you like this, you'll like this show. It functions just like Amazon. What if you're buying it? It knows what you've previously bought. What people don't realize, though, is their shows are actually manufactured using these algorithms. Like House of Cards, they knew House of Cards was going to be a hit because they knew the behaviors of their watcher, the people that watch, the viewers, and they were able to actually manufacture storylines and characters and plots and scenes based on a machine saying the probability of people watching this is this. There's a company called Epigix that you actually take a movie script before it ever goes into production, you feed it into the algorithm, and it will tell you how much money that movie will likely make at the box office. It'll even recommend to you to change characters and plot lines and settings and actors based on how much you can maximize in your profitability. So again, I look at this and say, well, how different is that than content? Like if I had an outline for an ebook or a white paper, and I could feed it into an algorithm and say, based on past behavior, this is probability of this getting more than 500 downloads is that. So this is kind of where my mind has been for 4 years, is just trying to understand what all this means. Another, just examples in your everyday life. Any Tesla owners in the crowd? I'm jealous, for one, if you are. Awesome. Have you used autopilot? Yeah. So autopilot is a feature that already exists within Tesla, which is kind of a partially self-driving car. They announced about 3 or 4 weeks ago that every car currently in production and moving forward has the hardware to be 100% autonomous, meaning my 4-year-old daughter may never need a driver's license because within 10, 12 years, cars on the road will be largely autonomous, and every manufacturer of cars is trying to do the same thing. If you use Siri and ask a question in Siri, or a really cool one, if you haven't noticed this yet, in the new iOS for the iPhone, go in and search for an image of something, a tree. I did Legos, like my kids have Legos. Search for dog. It will pull up every photo you have. I have 26,000 on my phone. It automatically recognizes images of dogs or Legos in all 26,000 photos and surfaces it for you. It's using something called deep learning to do that. It's actually recognizing images with you never having to tag anything. Alexa works the same way, natural language processing. It's understanding what you're asking it and figuring out what you want. A really cool thing that I'm assuming Dharmesh is going to talk about today is GrowthBot. So Hubspot's doing some really cool things through Dharmesh's kind of personal initiative in this space, where he's built a tool that's basically like a marketing assistant. How many people in here have tested GrowthBot? Cool. Like, you see the potential, right? Like, it's so what he did is Dharmesh, and again, I'm not. He told this story at Partner Day, so I'm not telling you things you haven't heard. But he saw this opportunity, like, to build a bot that could become a virtual assistant for marketers and answer questions like, what are my top 5 blog posts in the last 12 months? What software do my competitors use? What keywords am I optimized around? What keywords are my competitor optimized around? And to spit out immediate responses to that. So he's been hacking away himself building this tool. And that's an awesome entry point for HubSpot. Like, they're playing in this space. We just don't often know it's happening behind the scenes. But again, I'm assuming that they're going to talk quite a bit about that at some point today. So why marketing? Why now? If all these other industries were already happening, we know back to 30 years. I tell you, the government has been working on AI since the 1950s. Like, this is not a new concept. But we weren't ready yet. There was a couple of pieces. One is data. Artificial intelligence needs massive amounts of data to be really, really smart. When Watson won at Jeopardy, they fed it the entire internet. Like, it consumed everything, Wikipedia page, any knowledge it could consume, it took in to figure out responses. So data was one, processing speed is another. To do this well, you have to have computers that are really, really fast. So even in the 80s, computers weren't that fast yet. Now they're very fast. The other thing, and the most important thing in marketing, is the reward for disruption. So this is, if this is intriguing to you, I would say start with this book. So this is what led me down this path. It's called Automate This by Christopher Steiner. In the book, he talks about how do you know when an industry is ripe to be disrupted. And it's this simple equation, the potential to disrupt. There's no debating marketing has the complexity that makes it worth disrupting. Like, there is a potential there to make it more efficient, to make us more productive. The reward, though, is the key. There's more money on Wall Street. There's more money in healthcare. There's more money in logistics and transportation. Those industries came first because there's only so many people that actually know how to do engineering for AI, machine learning engineers. Why would they build marketing widgets if they could take down Wall Street? So you needed kind of this curve of adoption to where there was enough people and enough reward to spend their time in marketing. So one of the key ways to figure out when a market is going to be disrupted is to start following the money. So this is a really simple look at the automation space, which we'll just lump HubSpot into for the sake of this argument. So starting in 2012, you had ExactTarget IPO for $161 million. Oracle buys Eloqua for $871 million. Salesforce buys ExactTarget, who had bought Pardot for $2.5 billion. IBM buys Salesforce. So these are all marketing automation plays. And then currently, HubSpot's market cap as of this morning is $1.935 billion. So just in the 10 years HubSpot has existed, this whole automation space has emerged, and massive amounts of money have flowed into it. That led to all these innovations. The challenge with automation as it exists today, though, is as we started this talk about, it's largely still manual. Automation takes what you tell it to do and it makes it wildly efficient. It makes us more productive, but you're still telling it what to do. The other problem is IBM tells us that 90% of all the data in the world was created in the last 2 years. So if you think about as a marketer, all the data you have access to that could inform what you do next, where you put your marketing dollars, where you spend your resources, what staff you hire, all of these are sources of data for us. But the problem is, like, how do you figure out what to do with that? Which analytics report you actually look at to drive your next action? So as humans, we have this finite ability to actually figure out what to do, to process all this data, to optimize our performance, to create content at scale. But algorithms, that set of instructions where they actually start learning themselves, is limitless what it can do. So they have the infinite ability to process the data, deliver predictions, recommendations, content. So like lead scoring is kind of like a predictive thing in HubSpot now, where you put in information, but you're teaching it, like if it meets these criteria, give it this lead score. That sort of stuff is like moving into the prediction space. But largely marketing is still human powered with some automation mixed in. But the future is actually a lot closer than we probably think. So I mentioned earlier the Associated Press. So they're writing 10 times more earnings reports using a technology called natural language generation. So again, it's just kind of one of those AI terms, but what it means is the machine is actually creating narratives. So this is an example of an earnings report by the Associated Press. This is from Q2. But you can see up top, the byline is by Associated Press, and it reads exactly like a human would have written it. Except at the bottom, it says this story was generated by automated insights using Zacks investment data. What they did is they took a feed of data and they taught a machine how to tell the story, and it can tell this thing at scale infinitely. It can do thousands of stories in the time it took you to open the Word document. So this is 8 months ago, I actually thought the machine just did this. So go back to that question of, can we create content at scale? This technology is what made me think, instead of having to figure out how to staff a bunch of writers, maybe we could actually automate it through machines. So I started looking into natural language generation. And we had this use case. We have this online assessment tool where we have about 3,000 people who've gone through and rated their marketing. So I thought, well, let's try and automate this. So instead of just visualizations, after people go through and rate themselves across these 130 factors, we could actually give them findings and narrative based on their reports. So this is an example of, like, you know, if you go in and do the marketing technology, it may spit out and say marketing tech is critical and these are the areas you rated poorly and we would recommend focusing here. So it's trying to recommend activities. Right now we have to manually do this. And if we go into a single report, it takes probably an hour to pull like 10 to 15 key findings. They have to write it and edit it, and it's a process. It's cool and it could be really valuable, but it's time consuming, so we don't do everything we could with it. So I looked into Automated Insights, the company that does the Associated Press, and I figured, well, let's just marry it up. Let's connect this data source to theirs, and boom. So lucky for us, Automated Insights actually released a product, a SaaS product, that for $250 a month, you can subscribe now, put your data in, and it spits out a narrative, in theory. So we get Automated Insights. I upload data. And you see insert data, add synonym, add branch. I'm like, where's my narrative? Like there's no words here, it's a blank screen. So what I then learned, natural language generation, is actually a human writing the original narratives. You still have to envision that story, but then like when you're creating branching logic in HubSpot, you actually tell it, if it's greater than 80, it's strong, or it's fantastic, or you create all these variations. And then, so the green is like the data points which automatically get inserted, the purple are synonyms, and the blue underline is branching logic. So I was like, okay, so there's actually work to be done here. But so one, it was like, oh, not as exciting as I thought. Then the other part was like, but who knows to do this? Like I don't know a single marketer that even knows what natural language generation is. I know a lot of companies that have massive amounts of data and are right now manually telling the stories of that data. So it started kind of opening my eyes to the possibilities for marketers to integrate this kind of stuff with your inbound marketing campaigns. Because if you do like state of the industry reports, or if you have proprietary data, like you're a software company of all this user data that you just don't know what to do with, or internal reports. We've been using automated insights for a year and a half to do our Google Analytics reports. So that they actually built a template for, so we didn't have to create it. But in real time, we can just hit a button and it'll take any portal we're connected to in Google Analytics and turn out a 7-page report of everything happening on the site with recommendations of what to do. So that's like a really practical application, and there's another company called Narrative Science that has a free product to do the same thing. So you can just connect it to your Google Analytics account, and it'll send you like weekly summaries of what's happening on your site, your AdWords, Facebook campaigns, things like that. So for us, again, in that use case we're building, if I wanted to do 50 briefs a month based on marketing score assessments, it would take about 50 hours, about an hour a brief. In this version, using kind of this machine-assisted approach, we could cut it down to about 15 minutes per, and that's largely editing time because it'll actually spit it out instantaneously. And that's about 12 and a half hours, so we could save 37 and a half hours and create 50 times more content than we're currently creating. That's an AI technology that exists and is available to you today from multiple vendors that you could marry with HubSpot to start telling better data-driven stories. And again, the key is you actually need humans that know how to do this. So you need people who are writers and that can figure out what the stories are going to be and then tell them within there. The benefits, more accurate, there's zero human error. So if you think about the Associated Press earnings reports, unless the data is wrong, there is no chance of having an error within the content because it's just pulling right from a spreadsheet. More content published, more cost efficient, creates more engagement, more opportunities. So where is this going? Like what's kind of next for it? So this is, again, that follow the money idea. Private investment in the AI sector has grown from 1.7 billion to almost 15 billion in 2014. The AI-based analytics alone could grow to 70 billion by 2020. There are already, and this is what we've kind of learned in the last 8 to 10 months, dozens of tools, companies, products being built that are powered by artificial intelligence that can do these things: predict, plan, create content, optimize the content, promote, measure, analyze, personalize, and it can all, in some cases, it can actually be integrated with HubSpot to do it. And that's the real key, and one of the things I'll touch on later is you need to look at your current tech stack, the things that are core to what you do, and find ways to complement it. There is no AI platform you're just going to move everything to and you're just going to leave here and everything's going to be solved. You can start using pieces of this to enhance what you're doing with your inbound marketing program and potentially make leaps forward in terms of efficiency and performance. Again, the follow the money concept, almost 280 million just to these 10 companies. These are all AI-powered companies that do some variation of analytics or content creation or prediction. What we found is most of the tools that are being built that you can actually integrate with a HubSpot or you can use to augment inbound marketing are primarily built for enterprises. So they're still largely customizing the solutions. So it seems like, oh, this sounds awesome, I'll just plug this in and we'll go. They're still spending a lot of time customizing for people, so you often need the bigger budgets. Automated Insights is one of the first I've seen to create kind of a cloud product that's very affordable that can make it approachable for people. By the way, this deck is going to be online afterwards too, so if there's things you want out of it, it'll be on my Twitter account, and I think Inbound will publish it. A big, I wouldn't say it's a watershed moment, but an important moment in the marketing industry happened in September. Salesforce introduced something called Einstein. Salesforce has bought 9 AI companies in the last 2 years, spent over $2 billion doing it. And what they've done is they've taken all these technologies and created an AI layer that now sits throughout the Salesforce product. And it's emerging, but if you have HubSpot plus Salesforce, you could actually start integrating some of the technologies baked into their product to do some more fascinating things with both products. And this is kind of, a quote from Benioff, like, this is the future, this is where we're going, we have to accept this, and they've gone kind of all in on this play. If you ever wondered when you upload a photo to Facebook how it knows who else is in the picture with you, that's deep learning. It's facial recognition. It actually takes like a couple dozen points on someone's face and marries it up to what they have in their database. So they use deep learning. Kind of it's not a big secret, but for people who haven't followed it, it's a bit of a secret. Facebook is an artificial intelligence company that happens to have a social network to gather a ton of data on you. Like, that's what they are. If you looked at the earnings report call, I think from Q2, Zuckerberg said he was kind of stepping a bit back from a CEO day-to-day role to focus his energy on 3 things. One of them was artificial intelligence. They, in fact, have an entire research lab at Facebook built to do exactly that. So they say they were committed to advancing field of machine intelligence, developing technologies to give people better ways to communicate, seek to understand intelligence, and make intelligent machines. So earlier this year, when they made the big splash around bots, that was kind of coming out of this. Google is, back in 1999 or 2000, Sergey actually said we're an AI company. Same thing. Everything you do on Google, they learn from. They have more data than probably anybody in the world, and they're using it to do all kinds of interesting things with their technology. This affects you as a marketer because earlier this year, their head of artificial intelligence became their head of search. And now the 3rd most important factor to determine where your content and your website show up in Google is something called RankBrain, which is their machine learning element to their search. They don't actually know how it works. So now that's kind of a generalization, but what they did is they built a tool that itself is getting smarter, and they can't really go in at any point and look at the branching logic of how it decided to rank one thing over the other. Because the smarter it gets, the harder it becomes for the people who created it to figure out what it's doing. And you can't really talk about the story of AI without IBM. So I kind of started with IBM as being a big part of what drove us, but they have over 500 AI-related patents. In 2014, they took Watson, the technology they built for Jeopardy, and they made it an open platform. So you can now actually build your own tools on top of Watson. Like if you have an idea to do something more efficient, you could go find a developer, patch into the API for Watson, and actually build a tool to do it. They also have a free thing called Watson Analytics, which I would recommend checking out. It's really cool. It takes data for free, and it explores it and recommends things to think about. So we're actually using it for content marketing purposes. We'll take a data set, import it, and it'll give you like a dozen questions to ask about the data. Like, why is this region up 12% over the other region when in the previous year it wasn't? It's like, I would have never even thought to ask that question. So it looks in your data set, and it needs to be structured like rows and columns. And it'll find stories for you to tell within it. So again, just kind of like one of those takeaways, you can try it. Just go to Watson Analytics and sign up for the free version. What Watson does, though, is natural language processing and machine learning. Natural language processing, the easiest way to think about this is a machine has no idea whether you're looking at a chair or a table. Like inherently, when it's born, it doesn't know the difference between these things. It needs to be taught. The same goes for human language. It has no idea what those words mean. It needs to learn over time and parse them out and figure it out. That's what they did on Jeopardy. They taught it to understand human questions and understand the intent behind them and puns and metaphors and actually figure things out based on it. So that's what Watson does, and then it creates probabilities of what the answer would be. It also now creates content. So this is from September. First time ever, Watson was used to create a movie trailer. So what they did is it's actually a horror movie about AI. They took 100 horror films, and they fed those films to Watson. And it analyzed the scariest moments of those 100 horror films. Then they fed it the finished product of this movie, and it went through understanding human language and reactions, and it found the scariest moments of the new movie and automatically put those together into a trailer. So something that would usually take weeks, it became hours of just some human editing at the end. It was a test thing. Watson's not out of the box going to do this. They taught it to do this, but it is actually starting to create content. So this is what it is. If you go to the Watson site, you can kind of learn from it. And this is just kind of heading down the final path here. This is the CTO of IBM Watson, Rob High, who's one of the guys behind the building of Watson, one of the guys behind the Jeopardy Watson that we know. So he says cognitive technology, which is their term for AI basically, is there to extend and amplify human expertise, not replace it. Did anyone happen to see the 60 Minutes special on Watson about a month ago? Just a couple people. I would highly recommend watching. It's about a 23-minute segment. You can watch it online. I would stop after about 15 minutes. The last guy was crazy. But the first one told this incredible story. So University of Chapel Hill Cancer Center, a guy named Dr. Ned Sharpless runs the cancer center there. There are about 20 institutions in the United States that IBM is actively working with to integrate Watson to make basically Dr. Watson. So Dr. Sharpless was very pessimistic. He didn't believe that you could actually teach Watson to understand tumors, diagnose them, and create treatment paths. So the problem they run into, though, and you can relate this over to the marketing side, there are about 8,000 new medical papers come out every day. So once a week, the medical board gets together, they look at all the cases, and they try and figure out what is going on with these patients, and then they try and diagnose it best they can and create a treatment path. He said that oftentimes they are doing this based on data that's about 12 to 24 months old, because no one can read 8,000 articles a day. IBM comes in, they teach Watson in about a week to read medical literature. In one more week, Watson consumes 25 million medical papers. Also scoured the internet and found every clinical trial related to cancer that was available on the internet. That was amazing. So Ned was kind of blown away. But he wasn't convinced. So they went back and they took 1,000 cases of actual patients that they went through and analyzed, that the board met, so the best doctors they have. In 99% of the cases, Watson found the same thing as the humans. In 30% of them, Watson found something the humans missed that would have changed the path of treatment for 300 patients. So project that out across an entire industry. This is why Watson is now being built in at the Cleveland Clinic and all these other institutions. What we do as marketers is obviously not as important as what they're doing there. But the technology and the implications to what we do are amazing. So again, if you go back to how should I spend $100,000, there's only so many ways to do it, but it's really hard for us to figure out the best ways. And new articles come out. I mean, Hubspot publishes probably 10 a day. Marketing Land, you know, take your pick. There's so much new information. You come to this conference, you hear 15 speakers who all have incredible insights. You can't possibly take all that in and adapt what you're doing as a marketer every day. And what I'm telling you is in the not too distant future, you actually won't have to. There is no one I know that is actually building that piece, that true intelligence engine, but it's there. The basics of it are there. It's been done in other industries. Right now, what is possible is to take the things we do every day and amplify them, augment our abilities. We're not replacing us, despite the quote I'll show you on the next page. It's not replacing us as marketers. If you want to go deeper on the job side of this, because it is an inevitable question I get, and it's a natural question for marketers, is will we have jobs in 5 years? There was actually a study done at the University of Oxford on the computerization of industries, and they looked at over 700 industries and ran probabilities of those people being replaced. I will tell you, you don't want to be a telemarketer. It was number one. But what we do, knowledge-based work, is actually pretty good. Most of what it's going to do is take the menial tasks we don't like doing, do them better than we can, and let us focus on the creative pieces and the things we're uniquely qualified to do. So going back to that first slide of all the things you do as a marketer, and think about if you didn't have to do those. Not like, oh, I could reduce my staff 50%, but wow, that's like 40 hours of my life every month that I don't like doing anyway. And you could move that over and start focusing your time and energy on the things you actually enjoy doing and you're uniquely qualified to do. An important side note about it, the Associated Press. Nobody lost their job. When they moved to machine-generated earnings reports, it actually freed journalists up to tell human interest stories and qualitative stories that they weren't having time to do before. That's, to me, what I think the next at least 5 years, maybe a little longer, looks like for us, is piecing together technology, adding it to our core tech stack that we already have, and augmenting what we're capable of doing. But I do truly believe that that's actually only the beginning. So I'll end with one more story, and a few quick tips, and then we'll take questions if we have time. So I mentioned Demis Hassabis from Google DeepMind. Again, if you want to do a fun Google search, just search Demis and Atari, and you'll find a 6-minute segment that'll kind of blow your mind. So what IBM did with Watson was awesome, but it was purpose-built. They gave Watson the rules of engagement. They taught it how Jeopardy works. They taught it the type of questions that would be asked. They fed it billions of pieces of information to come up with answers. It was specifically designed to win at Jeopardy. DeepMind went further. They took 49 Atari games from the 1980s. They didn't teach it anything. They taught it no rules of engagement. All they did, take Space Invaders as an example, was said, get a higher score. Rewind to me back in 2012, someone comes and says, I have $10,000 a month. Can you get us 50 new leads? I don't know. I don't know if you could need 50,000 a month to get new leads. That was why I started trying to figure this out, was I felt like they needed a higher score and I didn't actually know how much it was going to take to get there. What they did with DeepMind, when you see this in the YouTube video, the very first time they started playing Space Invaders, it got shot 3 straight times, died, game over. They left it running on the learning algorithm overnight on a regular MacBook, no advanced technology. When they came back the next morning, it was winning Space Invaders in ways humans had never even thought to. It was shooting predictive shots. It knew where the spaceship was actually going to be, and it would shoot it in a second and a half before it would get there. That was the key. That was kind of a breakthrough moment. If you search DeepMind News right now, you'll see that their next play is StarCraft 2. I'm not a game geek. I don't know what StarCraft is. All I know is it's probably far more complex than Space Invaders. So they're now trying to teach a machine to win at that game. So again, given no instruction other than how to obtain the award. And then what it did is it analyzed its previous performance and deciphered what actions led to better scores and eventually changed its own behavior to get that better score. So for 4 years, this is what I was obsessed with, is everybody we talk to needs leads. What is the best way to get those leads? What is the greatest probability of success for the least amount of money and effort? I don't have the answer to that today, but that's why I'm doing this talk. It was kind of one of those things where I can't build this, and let's just start putting it out in the industry and moving the conversation forward. So I believe what inevitably will come next is a marketing intelligence engine. There will be some platform, some tool designed to actually help us figure out that what is the best way for me to get 100 new qualified leads. Right now, you're drawing from your own limited knowledge, experience, education to figure that out, and your small peer group. Go to the doctors at the University of North Carolina. All they have is the 12 brains in that room, and they're 12 of the brightest minds in the world. They missed 300 patients that could have been affected by a better treatment path. So if you look at what we do, it is no way as complex as what they do every day. To do it, it's going to take time. That no one can actually build this today. It's almost like it is not the Ex Machina thing, but it is. There are pieces of the technology that don't actually exist, that aren't connected, that need to be connected for this to happen. In particular, you need to, like if you think about like a Basecamp or an Asana or any of those project management tools, they're just glorified task lists, every one of them. They're just a different way to manage task lists. They often don't know how much time or money you spent on each project or campaign that you're doing as a marketer. So you have these kind of outputs, like projects and campaigns may be known, what went into it, and then how it performed, like connecting all those pieces together. That's a starting point. Like that would give you the kind of data to start running some predictive stuff. It doesn't exist. There is no tool I've found after looking for 4 years that actually brings all that together. Again, I think there will be, though. So again, I'll kind of end with a quote from the Automate This again. And as I said, ignore the replace humans part of this and focus on the last part. Like industries will be reborn. This is going to transform marketing and sales. There are people that know far more about this topic than I do that believe artificial intelligence will have a greater impact on business and humanity than the internet itself. And I believe them. There is no reason to not believe that statement when you understand everything that's possible. Go read Wired magazine from last month with the talk with Obama about AI in the White House and what they're looking at and their fears of it and why they're now investing heavily in AI. It's everywhere, and you're going to start seeing it talked about. So So 3 things to get started, because as crazy and macro level as this is, there's actually some things you can do. So I would say grab the deck afterwards, go to that second slide with what are the things you do every day. Look at those repetitive manual tasks that take a ton of your time. And start doing a little homework and say, can I replace any of these? And it may only be one thing, like for example, the Google Analytics thing. We were spending about 5 hours a month running Google Analytics reports for every client. We now spend about 30 minutes to an hour just by using AI for like $500 a month. You can do that. That tech's there for you to do. That alone may change. So it may be one thing, and you may not do anything else for a year, but that one thing may drive efficiencies. The second is if you have data, whether it's financial data, performance data, proprietary data from a software product, whatever it may be, there are ways to tell deeper narratives at scale that you're not doing today. I can promise you that. Look at your data sets. Think of ways you can tell stories and assume that there is a way to intelligently automate that story. You don't have to figure out yet how, but start looking at your data, because as much content as we all put out, the competitive advantage that's probably sitting out there in your industry is to be the one that figures out how to tell really, really rich stories at scale, because no one is doing that. And the last is start with HubSpot, because I assume we're all HubSpot users in this room. Look at the integrations that are available. Think about the tools that are already built to integrate with HubSpot, and see if there's ways to start getting pieces of AI tied into what you're already doing, so you don't have to change a whole tech stack. You're not doing that. There's going to be more and more things that can be baked in that'll dramatically enhance it, but I would start there. And again, if you're a Salesforce plus HubSpot user, there's probably more things you can do, because there's a whole ecosystem on that side. I would look at IBM as well. It might not be part of your tech stack today, but you can do some really fascinating things there. All right, thank you very much.